Welcome back to Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win. I know it's been a while. We've been on a little hiatus. How you doing, Sheree?
Um, I'm here, as your thing says, or maybe I'm not here. Hold up, hopefully sign me out. I was trying to sign into the chat. Okay, I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. Um, you know, life been crazy, but I'm just trying to push through the ups and downs.
Yeah, for sure. Know it too well. Yeah, welcome to Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win. Here on Black Liberation Media. This is episode 41. It's been a little while, been a little while. But we definitely have a guest coming up later on in a few. Talking about some funding the revolution, financial literacy, some other stuff. This is going to be interesting. I haven't done a lot of reading on there. One of Cherie's guests, so I'm looking forward to this conversation. But if you can get the link and share it with some folks, especially some of your people that you know who be talking about getting the bag or funding the revolution or nonprofit or whatever they be talking about, share that link with them. And at the 15 to 20 minute mark, we'll bring our guests up. But yeah, what's been up, Sheree?
What hasn't been up? Struggle is up. Oppression is up. That's how I'm really feeling, though. Just trying to navigate 2026. It was a very rough, lonely end of the year for me. So yeah, I've just been I had started a new job and was locked in on that all last month, lost the job last week. Um in the midst of that, been creating some dope art though. Creating some really dope art. I feel like this could be a great creative year for me as a cultural worker, along with the work I'm, trying to still do as an organizer. But I think, you know, I'm just trying to figure out how to make it work, as far as this job thing, just trying to figure out how to, I feel like I'm coming into some resources economically to fund, the work that I'm trying to do. But it's just as far as me personally, I have to make sure that's taken care of as well. And so I'm trying to figure out, do I go to another job and end up in the same situation where it's like, because I just went through a fire in a back to back. So to me, I feel like it could be a sign of like maybe I need to do a different thing for income or get more creative. So I'm like just thinking of other things I can do, considering freelance work and what I already do as well. Just trying to figure it out because it's a lot, to maintain me. So it's like then I'm like also trying to consider lifestyle changes as far as like, moving and everything else. Just trying to figure out, how to take care of myself and still do the things that I want to do. Obviously, I don't want to, end up in a situation where I'm more focused on my art generating income. That's, why I like to have a job. So I'm less focused about, my cultural work generating income or even trying to generate income as an organizer. But, it is hard trying to figure it all out. But yeah, just trying to keep my head up. I feel like I'm tired of being sad. So I think that's because I was really sad last year. It's like I spent Christmas pretty much alone and all that stuff because my family went to Florida. And I was just here alone by myself. And so I'm just trying to like, sit in it and not be so emotionally distressed, I guess, because when you lose a job, you also lose your access to healthcare. You lose your access to the healthcare. It's like then you lose your access to therapy. So then your mental can kind of go a lot of dark places. So, you know, um, yeah, just trying to push through it. I just cry when I want to cry. I laugh when I want to laugh. I sleep when I want to sleep. Um, I'm just yeah, just pushing through it. Um, I don't know. Maybe that was long, but I know we got some time, so I thought, yeah. But the cultural work, I'm excited about. I'm still excited about the cultural work for this year. So it's like that's the one thing that's like keeping me from jumping off of my roof. I'm in Atlanta. Say a lot in the comments.
Yeah, tough. Sorry to hear that. I think a bunch of folks in the chat are chiming in. So yeah, I think it seems like this time, um, I think everybody tend to be like, oh well, back in the days or this whatever, and I just don't know that we have as much expertise on this time period as we claim that we have oftentimes, and how to navigate these things. There's a lot of online shit that's happening, so you know rather even how we interact with orgs and people's real life is like you get condensed to what you are online, and whether your org get condensed to what it is online or you get condensed to who you are online, um, life is difficult. So even as you think about insurance, I'm like, oh damn, like I mean, I don't think, yeah, I don't think we sit with like the realities and the complexity of life and this thing that we um, are navigating. And I think even on a show the other day, I remember like online people were talking about like the Nike, the Nike sweatsuit that Maduro had on.
Mm-hmm.
Like meanwhile, like they kidnapped the dude and his wife, and it looked like they assault his wife. And
Mm-hmm.
for some reason, we talking about the Nike sweats, and I was like,
Yeah, that was interesting how the conversation shifted to the Nike stuff.
it's like so. Yeah, but maybe your guest gonna bring us all the tools to figure out how to live beyond our means. I'm joking.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I don't know if I should go too much into it, because I guess we still got another 10 minutes before they can come on. Um, but yeah, I mean, I was really curious about, sorry, I'm over here getting distracted by the comments like I always do. I was really curious, to have her on just because I've never heard people talk about money or like teach or provide a service around money in like this radical leftist space. And I just was curious about the mindset behind it, the terminology. Is it dialectical? Um, you know, uh, I'm just really curious, kind of like, because I think we had Erica on and we talked about financial literacy and how and always stuck with me how she said overall, the basic stuff, even what they poke at Brokish is like, yeah, you can, there's stuff you can do to, survive and, whatever personal decisions, but it's just always the way that it's marketed to us as if, if we don't do this, then everything is our fault. If we do go with these teachings, then everything will be so great and grandiose and all of that. So I'm just really curious about like how do we talk about money in like a very dialectical way where we're being honest about the current the current climate, but not also looking at it as an overall solution to the point where it blocks us from actual collective liberatory change. So I guess I'm just really trying to, I guess, get my head around that. I mean, and even living through what I'm living through, I'm wrestling that with that personally. So I just was curious, like I said, of like her perspective, because I've never seen somebody kind of talk about it this way. And so I still haven't really fully even made up my mind about how I feel about it, but I'm just curious to actually talk to the person and, yeah, see what this is, how it differs from the whole market of financial literacy. And, just how, yeah, I'm just curious.
Well, I see somebody sounds concerned about our audio. So how is the audio sound culture? 88 is I decided not to plug in my mic.
Yeah, is it my mic? Because I feel like Geechee sounds super, super smooth. I got a mic. I got a fancy mic too, but maybe I have it too far away. I'm moving it closer.
I think
Um,
I think this reminds me of why I don't like being on the screen too. It's kind of like all the shit we talking about, and the mic. Yeah. So yeah, let me know. I mean, I don't know if it sounds bad for everybody, but we'll try to accommodate everybody who's in the chat. Um, but yeah, so no, I think surviving and managing money and all this other stuff. I just think there's a just like with anything, like when industries are created around people's misfortunes, I don't never seem to see much good that comes out of creating an industry around that. Uh,
mhm.
so even when you start thinking about financial literacy and concepts like wealth, I mean, I just don't know. Yeah, I don't know. So, um, yeah, so maybe when I lean in like that, I can also plug my mic up too. But yeah, I I'm looking forward to hearing. I've heard a lot of these things um, over the years, and I'm looking forward to that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, yeah. So that's I guess what's going on. I mean, yeah, I'm looking forward to see it too. Because like I said, I guess I haven't. I mean, maybe because I feel like I've either it's like I feel like the only people that I see talking about this are like the financial literacy people that I know are scammy. But then I also think with her, there's a creative element too of like it seems like with her stuff it's more about like not even just organizers but like artistic people or people that are trying to do cultural work and like how to go about it in this predicament without producing burnout or so I'm just curious about what all of that looks like. And I guess even the spiritual, we talk about ancestral wealth. Like I've heard people talk about generational wealth, but I'm like, what is ancestral wealth? So I'm just like, I know I kind of always get annoyed when people talk about generational wealth and because I think it feeds into obviously the American dream and like the idea that we can beat capitalism in our lifetime and pass it down to our children or whatever. And
pass what now? Capitalism?
no, that we can beat or not beat, but like win, more so win. Like win under capitalism in a sense where you pass it down to your children, you create this generational wealth like a Jeff Bezos and a Elon Musk. And I feel like it just leans back into like the worship of capitalism. So I'm very curious of like, what does ancestral wealth mean?
So yeah, I don't know about that. I know you didn't ask, but um, something that I've been thinking through or working on that may be related to this is last Monday or whenever that was, I sat with the seniors, the tenants, and I guess for a while I was like, I thought everybody was making up stories,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was like, oh shit, I'm in Atlanta. Because everybody was like, "Oh, I knew King and the family, and they did this," and I was like, y'all niggas lying, like everybody's lying, like everybody. Because I asked a question, I was like, when did you first hear about King and whatever, and everybody just talking about their own personal story, and I'm like, but then it had to sit, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, oh I forgot, we are in Atlanta, and these are people, and King would have been like 95, 6 or whatever, um and so there was a point where after the session, all of them talk and we talked through some stuff. Then I sat with one sister or elder, and she started telling me something about skating. She said I dusted out my skates, uh, and my grandkids said, "Granny, you know how to skate?" And she's like, "Yeah." So I was like, started asking her more questions, and the questions started becoming targeted, and boom, 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 and then I end up like writing, writing like a narrative history biography off like what she was telling me. Um, And so this kind of made what you were saying made me think about this. Like, so part of it, and I'm gonna read some of it.
Yeah, read some of it. I didn't know if you wanted to get into it today. That's why I didn't,
Well,
but
no, what I'm yeah. But so she's like from Summer Hill, right? And if anybody know Atlanta, maybe you don't, but there's one of the supposedly black neighborhoods. Um, and Summer Hill at the time, that's where King was living at. Summer Hill in Auburn. She was, and multiple other people, but it was kind of like essentially the black Mecca, right? So when you think about the 40s and the 50s, like this was considered the black Mecca. They had diverse folks. It's right by um, AUC, and actually I'm not going to read it now, but I'll share it soon. But like when they talked about like the department store, what was the department store name? I don't even remember now. Why am I blanking on it? Something is easy. But there's like this big department store that was, pretty much a bigger employer. Segregation at this time, and then but people had money, and then one of the people who made history who lived in her neighborhood, their parents was like black business owner, and it talked about all the patrons being black, and they didn't have white patrons. And I'm like, well, that's cool. It's something to celebrate until you realize that all the black people that's buying stuff from the patrons and getting their hair done actually got jobs from white corporations that exploiting their labor. So it's kind of like, yeah, I just think sometimes the conversation around building something, I don't know, it always stops at like not having a conversation around like the means of production and what to do with the money, the little money you have, how to manage the little money you have.
mm-hmm.
So I just always think that's an interesting how I hear people frame. And again, as I said, as I finish it, I want her to reread. I want her to read. I'm gonna read it to her and see if she want me to tighten anything up, and then I'll probably share it publicly.
Oh, okay.
Conversations.
So yeah, I mean, it's always amazing that elders, like when you put it together, like, my dad's from Birmingham, and so a lot of historical figures, were around like during his time, and obviously, like it's like he was around, stuff like, all the churches and stuff that you hear about during that time, and he knew one of the four little girls from 16th Street Baptist Church, and even like being from Birmingham, he knew Angela Davis too. And it's like, even I remember hearing my grandma before she passed, kind of just passively talking about Angela, like, yeah, I remember her, but it's like she's older than Angela Davis or whatever. So it's like she's like, yeah, I remember her, and I knew her parents, and so it's always interesting, when you kind of run into like that, because you don't really, you so used to hearing certain people, like studying them in time, that you don't think about the everyday people who were around them during that time and what they took from it, so yeah, that is always fascinating to me. So I look forward to like reading that. I mean, I know you sent me a little sneak peek, but I'm curious, when you actually do share it. I'm excited to hear that. But yeah, I think, yeah, passing down, and I mean, and that's, with my whole thing, like I said, when it comes to financial literacy, I feel like oh, she's in here. Yeah, I'm always curious to like, learn those differences. But we have our guest coming in now, Dr. Joey, and yeah, I guess we could go ahead and transition and take our break, and we'll be right back with her. I can't hear you.
I'm throwing copper at the coppers, but I'm shaking like Morocco. Say my prayers with the pistol, serve the sinners with the chopper. All my buddies got it from scratch. My house had Betty Crocker. His mama owned D. He ain't even get no shot up. Profit is invisible. Profit come from product. He think it buffet. He can't comprehend no potluck. God bless the child with his own powder to rock.
Hi, Dr. Joey.
Hello.
Welcome to Black Liberation Media. This is Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win. Me and you have been communicating these past few weeks, and I just came across your page one day randomly on Instagram, and I don't know, I just got deeply curious about who you are and what you do, the services you provide. And And so I guess we could first start off with just you introducing yourself and how you would describe yourself and what you do.
Well, thank you for having me here. I'm excited for this conversation. I'm Joey. I'm an educator and coach based in my homeland here in Taiwan. Moved back about 2.5 years ago from California. So I think a lot about what we are growing in the gaps when empire crumbles, right? And who we need to become in order to usher in that paradigm change. And so my work centers on that and coaching and educating people to decolonize their voice and visibility so that we can grow a network of knowledge, right? That can disarm and dismantle colonial oppressive structures.
Ashe. Yeah. I didn't know if you wanted me to jump in on my first question or if you wanted to go first, Geechee. Yeah, I'll kick it off. I guess we were already kind of talking about just like some of the interesting language that I've seen, on your posts and like even looking through your different curriculums. Obviously, it's not the same as being in like an actual class and whatnot and like speaking with you virtually and everything. So I just was curious overall about how you view terms like building post-capitalist wealth and also ancestral wealth, and how it differs from the things that I think we kind of side eye in this generation when it comes to financial literacy, building generational wealth, because it seems like it feeds into like this kind of capitalist mindset that if we just work hard enough, we'll have, these great things under capitalism without thinking about actually trying to, move past capitalism and destroy it. And it gets us caught up in how we can just win under capitalism. And we know, obviously, it's a very small amount of us that can actually win or have all this luxury and whatnot under capitalism. So I'm just curious of the grounding of ancestral wealth and post-capitalist and building post-capitalist wealth and how you would define those things.
Yeah, I love this question because it just shows me the rigor of the thinking, right? That we have to disrupt this binary, that it's either capitalism or not, right? And so where I want to start is, I think, I don't know, interrupt me because I don't know the depth of the conversations you've already had with your audience, but I think it's really important when we have these conversations that we start to have like working definitions of what we're actually talking about, right? And so when we talk about capitalism, I'm always curious to see how much people have explored their definition of capitalism and understanding that the nuanced difference between capitalism and, say, commerce, capitalism and different economic systems, right? And so when this question about ancestral wealth, we really look at this in a historical lens that capitalism is a relatively new economic social order, right? And that our ancestors were engaging in economies, like even economies grounded in the natural world, right? That had nothing to do with capitalism, that didn't resemble capitalism at all. So what's the main characteristic of capitalism that makes it so sinister is that it is driven by the accumulation of resources and profit over everything else with no natural limit in sight. And the only way to accomplish that is by extraction, exploitation, stealing resources, labor, right? Human labor, innovation, intelligence, right? Ideas. And so when you talk about, there's this major discourse out there about financial literacy for minoritized and oppressed groups, you're right to critique it, that's saying like, basically, yeah, we understand there's this wealth gap. There's this huge accumulation of resources and wealth in a minority of people, right? Generally white men, right? Legacy wealth holders. And so there's this discourse of like, let's try to close the wealth gap. But what's missing in that financial literacy framework is critiquing the entire system, the entire game that it's asking people to play, right? And so what I've started thinking about and what my collaborator, Simone, when we put out this course, Ancestral Wealth, was we need to like go back to the drawing board collaboratively across cultures, across contexts, understanding that whatever we do for our communities has to be place-based, has to be culturally responsive, has to be situational. But we all come from a wealth of lineages and knowledges that have been disrupted by colonization. But if we can tap into those knowledge systems, we have blueprints that show us how to be in reciprocal social, economic webs with one another that is completely opposite from this capitalist colonization model that requires exploitation. I'll pause there.
No, thank you. So, peace and welcome. I think I want to start. I agree in terms of definitions. Oftentimes, we are walking around and talking around with different definitions. So I'm curious. Like, even when you think about wealth, like how you're defining it, and that's kind of that question. And then ancestral wealth and systems. I'm curious how you explore, like, okay, there were ancestral practices and things, right? And then this thing came, and now we have to navigate this thing that I'm not sure that everybody will say that we have to think about what's after it, if there might not be nothing after it. Like there might be an end. So yeah, I'm curious the wealth part, and then like what would the blueprint tell you to do in terms of fighting, changing, or resolving the contradictions of capitalism?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to say, can you say more about what you're referring to when people might not believe that there's an end to capitalism?
Well, so a lot of times when people say like post-capitalism, and then they say things like, oh, well, so for instance, imperialism and genocide, ecocide, it could like end people, right? It could end the planet can respond to the virus that humans have been. So I'm not sure that we're gonna have something after if we don't respond to it in a way that neutralizes it, I guess. So
yeah,
so I'm curious about the wealth and then the response to resolving the contradictions of capitalism, if that makes sense.
Okay, for sure. That makes it more clear. Because I was going to say, we know there's enough research that shows, right? Capitalism will collapse. It is not sustainable. So there will be an end, but can we reach an end to it before the planet determines that end? Like you've exploited this planet beyond measure, and it can no longer support living systems on it. I represent a group of thinkers that we are not fatalists. Right? And I think anyone who does liberatory work, revolutionary work, radical work, you have to ground your worldview is something that's not like we're not romanticizing, what we're doing, but we have to grow hope, right? And so what that means for me is that I have to look for patterns and evidence that indicates we can write this path that we're on, this train that we're on. We can steer this in a different direction. And that's why it's so important for me to go back to the wealth of knowledge that we each have in our ancestral bodies of knowledge and wisdom. And not only that, but we all have a common ancestor, which is this planet, right? And there is so much, I study living systems theory in my work, because there's so much to learn from the blueprint of nature about what reciprocity looks like. And so a lot of the foundations that I've been building my economic discourse on come from indigenous thinkers who have studied, like Robin Wall Kimmerer, who have studied the economic, if we can call it economic systems, like the systems of reciprocity, the systems of shared resources that support collective flourishing, mutual flourishing, are all embedded in our natural world. And our ancestors were in harmony and in tune with their natural world. So you'll notice that across cultures, prior to imperialism, they may have had differences in how they were structuring their societies and their economies, but there's a lot of resonance from culture to culture, because what they were attuned to was understanding that if I extract beyond measure, if I'm not sensitive to my flourishing being linked to the flourishing of everybody else in my living system, I understand that in the end, this harms me, right? And so reciprocity is a key notion that for me to pour into my web, my community, my collective, is to sustain my well-being, but not just for me in this lifetime. I mean, in my lifetime, it's for all the generations that come after me. It says this, first of all, you have to have a understanding of self that is not individualistic. And that's a hallmark of colonization and capitalism, is this myth of separation, that you are an individual being, that you're in competition with everybody else. But our ancestral worldviews, our indigenous worldviews, never saw any one of us as a single entity. We're all part of a web that is designed to flourish when we all feed into one another, when we all pour into one another. Sorry, did I lose track of the other part of your question there, though?
Well, the first part was like, how are you then defining wealth now? Because I feel like it always goes back to a particular relationship with the environment and doing something to the environment for individual gain. That's normally how I hear people define it, but I'm curious how you define the wealth that you're talking.
Yeah, so if we go back to living systems again, indigenous worldviews, we know that there's an abundance of resources on this planet, right? There's more than what we as a human species need. So that right there is the definition of wealth, right? There's a possibility for us as humans to be living on this planet where we do not have to spend our days toiling in labor in order to have our human needs met. And that goes beyond just like, people think about primitive times as though, they're just struggling against the elements and living in huts and whatever. But what colonization had to do in order to perpetuate that myth was obscure histories of actual wealth that go back to ancient times, right? And so I want to be careful here when we start talking about wealth, because we're going to get into where even our ancestors started to create currencies and trade. And I want to be careful about romanticizing our ancestral histories, right? We know that there weren't perfect humans, right? And even there's instances of slave trade or violence, things that happen within our own communities far before Europeans came to colonize and globalize the world. But what I always talk about is what colonization did was it disrupted our chance to inherit what was passed down to us by our ancestors and heal, elevate, and self-determine what culture and what legacies we want to pass on. So I say that as kind of a caveat when we start to talk about wealth and currencies. So we have this definition of abundance, our planet being able to sustain abundance for all of us, right? So long as there's not a gross accumulation of wealth in the hands of just a few, we can imagine that like every culture, every society all over the earth has enough to sustain, to have a population that's able to be restful, that's able to be, entertained and enjoying their family. And we have very recent histories of this. For example, the Kingdom of Hawaii in the 1800s, before European and American settlers came in and stole that land, they were enjoying a monarchy that served the people, where people only had to work 4 hours a day, a few days a week, and they were able to feed and sustain a population of millions. And with the time left over, they were pouring into their families. They were developing sciences like astronomies, so many forms of education and arts and entertainment. They had a rich society pre-colonial. So that's a blueprint of wealth that we're missing out on. And this exists in so many peoples all over. So what does that wealth look like? That wealth looks like we understand that we as an entire group of people, as an entire web, as an entire collective, we can't have just a few people hoarding that. We need to be in harmony with our natural resources, with the work that we're doing together. And we have an internal value system that is based off of, we need to see every member of our community thriving in order for us to be able to enjoy our wealth.
So I guess I'm curious when it comes to, like, I know you offer different courses, and I know from what I follow you on Instagram, so it seemed like you kind of wrapped something up, I think, last
Mhm.
night. So I'm curious of like your actual, without giving away too much or whatever. I'm curious about like the actual journey that people that are the things that you're able to teach, or that people are able to, I
Yeah.
guess, I know a lot of creative individuals tend to kind of do your courses. So I'm curious of like what they're able to take from
Mhm.
this teaching, and how they're able to actually put it into practice in the work that
Mhm.
they're doing for the collective, as far as and as also individuals within the collective, how they come in before, and then kind of what are they leaving with
Yeah.
after, when it comes to the work that they want to do in the world, whether it's work with the land, work with mutual aid, work within an organization, work within cultural work in the arts. I'm just curious of like how how people kind of come in mentally, and what do they leave kind of coming out.
Yeah, so the course that you're probably referring to is Ancestral Wealth. That's the name of
Mhm.
the course. I teach that alongside another course called Sovereign Storyteller, but I'll talk about Ancestral Wealth. We work with business owners, founders, entrepreneurs who are collective liberation minded and working to decolonize their practices in their business and with money. And the course is pretty comprehensive. We've attempted to make it grad level, rigorous, and a practicum. And we ask people to do math. We ask people to root into a different worldview, which I've kind of gone into detail here, which really ask them to see and start to be able to audit how capitalism, scarcity thinking, competition, how these things, these mechanisms are at play, sometimes subconsciously or unconsciously in their businesses, right? Where are you trying to extract from your clients? Where are you trying to extract from your collaborators? Because so long, we have to create educational spaces where we're able to set down our shame and understand that if any of these capitalistic or colonistic behaviors are showing up, that's to be expected when we've been conditioned our whole life in this system, right? So it is a lot of unlearning what's been conditioned into us around scarcity, around extraction, and then step into a space where can we, in communion with our ancestors, in relationship with our living elders, because we have to do this work collectively, right? If we're going to step into a collective paradigm, we have to be learning what are the actual modalities, methodologies of doing this work collectively. So I bring in my decolonizing and culturally responsive methodologies. We teach folks how to actually speak to their communities and do some business planning and crunching numbers together. We asked folks to calculate a liberation number. This was another one of the questions I had seen you send my way, is how do we avoid the pitfalls of capitalism? And one of the main things is we're inviting people to start dreaming bigger and seeing their business bigger, that their business is only one tool or strategy in a bigger picture of their ancestral assignment. And we define ancestral assignment if we were all born with a role for what mark we are here on earth to leave. And that work is not monetizable. You know what I mean? It's not commodifiable. That work is a spiritual and transmission. That work is a display of generosity, but we can start to view our businesses as a strategic tool in this liminal space of history that we're in right now, in which we are still contending with capitalism and living with contradictions and understanding that resources and funding is necessary in order for us to take a lot of the practical steps that help our people. So if we own a business, how are we positioned to become the best business owners possible? That's another pitfall that I see in a lot of liberation minded folks, that they are, their way of trying to contend with capitalism is lowering their prices, only offering tiered models. But what happens is they're not really able to sustain themselves, they're not able to sustain their own families, much less think in a larger scale of building infrastructure that actually serves their entire communities. So we're inviting folks into that expanded thinking and imagining, and asking them to sit with worksheets and actually calculate numbers of what do I need to generate in my business? Who do I need to partner with and collaborate with? What are all of the known ways that are not morally bankrupt in order to generate money? And a big part of that is redistribution, right? So it's not just increase of profit and accumulation of that resource. It's I'm creating this business as a conduit, as an aqueduct. Resources come in, I make sure I'm sustained, I'm paying my people, but then the excess is flowed right out to land, collective movements. So that's what we're here to do, because we really believe that it's the people of the global majority that need to start to form this council of world leaders, like morally intact world leaders and resource generators, in order to build what comes next after capitalism, or really to end capitalism before our planet has to end it, right?
Yeah, what I'm curious is who is the audience that you feel like you are led or called to engage, and how do you not maybe sound like because you named it at the beginning, like a lot of times oppressed people get propagandized into believing that they need to black, brown, whoever business their way out of this. How could you who's the audience, and then how do you I guess balance like the political, because it seems like there's still a, even when you talk about redistribution, I heard it from the business level, it sounds like, but not like the industry and I guess the whatever you're paying your taxes into, or how you're getting your money to banks. But it sounds like it's like a redistribution once you get the money. And then I heard you said something about like charging people, So I'm just curious about who's the audience, but then also like how do we make sure that this is not like a hyper entrepreneurial focus endeavor?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. It's really important. Our audience is people of the global majority. And like I said, mostly it's people who are building businesses. We have some people who also work in nonprofit spaces, but I would say the vast majority of people that have joined our course are founders of their own businesses. And this course in particular doesn't focus so much, like, first of all, none of it is prescriptive, right? So that's why it's so important for us to start with orienting your worldview, and really what we can give you is the tools of spotting capitalist and colonistic behaviors at play in your own life. Once you can do that, we're really leading you into a process of self-inquiry, but also community inquiry. Because for us to be prescriptive would be to, again, be falling into that pitfall of globalization, imperialism, this one size fits all, right? And that's why the ancestral communion part and the apprenticeship to your living elders part is so vital. Because what I'm hearing you say, and it's a really important critique, is how do we avoid just building businesses and then redistributing, as we've seen so many businesses sort of do this facade of I'm making tons of profit and then I'm like kind of doing this like performative donation, right? And almost like tax write-off of I'm giving my money away to this foundation, this and the other. And we are very deliberate, and that's not what we're talking about. We expect that people who go through our course actually will restructure their entire life to where how money passes through their hands, even at an individual level, changes, because your whole person and worldview changes. And when you eliminate scarcity and competition from your mindset, from your behavior, right? Understanding that everything has to be, the compass for everything that you do has to be reciprocity, has to be generosity. That really changes everything at an individual level, but we're not here to prescribe that for you. We trust that your community, your ancestors, your elders are going to have to map that way out for you, right? And your own discernment, your own sovereignty. But with regards to what we do teach explicitly with the redistribution, we are, and we're also mindful that this is very early stages. This is going to be a chapter, like an era of our work when it comes to leading the way for people to build infrastructure. So yes, I'm a pragmatist. Like a lot of us still have to pay our taxes. And if not, we risk, material outcomes, right? Imprisonment, fines, whatever. Some of us individually may be taking that on and saying, I'm going to take on that risk, but that's a very personal choice. But what we hope to do is create a dialogue around how can we create infrastructure that contends with our unnatural dependence on state. That's the other part of the definition of capitalism. We actually don't even live in a true free market capitalist society. Neoliberalism is where the state, the governments are colluding with the capitalists, the billionaires, in order to protect wealth and accumulation. So that's why there's so much power in both corporations and the state. So I'm a pragmatist. Like we can't have an idealist solution right now. We have to chip away at this system. But if I'm capable in my business of generating greater revenue, I'm talking about in the multi-millions, right? What can I build with that? Can I build water systems? Can I build education systems? Can I build food systems? Can I build elder care systems? Like we're asking people to start dreaming and co-conspiring at that level, because once we start to bring those systems of real infrastructure back into the hands of the community, can we render state systems obsolete? That's the big question that we're working towards.
Interesting. So yeah, so you mainly work with, I guess for me too, I guess I've always kind of had this view of like entrepreneurs or like people that are like, wanting to, or like their purpose is business. I always see it, me as somebody that is, thinking of post-capitalism. I identify as a socialist. I'm always looking at it so much as like an issue because it kind of brings sometimes people away from actual collective organizing, where they would be at a job and be like, I'm fighting for fair pay and for, all these things. But you're looking at it, I guess, somewhat in reverse, where these people that are starting businesses, trying to get them to kind of like with whatever they start, whether, and I don't know if co-op would be the word, but you did mention collaboration.
Yeah.
But seeing, like, for lack, I mean, I'm socialist, I'm going to say it. I don't know if that's how you identify, but I'm thinking, so what you're looking at is how can these businesses or these business people, instead of going down this hill of like, I want to start my own business and it only gets me rich and you're looking at it from a perspective of the people that have it in their heart, not that business is the solution, but the people that have it in their heart to want to start a business. How can they go about it so that it's more collective minded, cooperative minded? The word I would say it wrong. Reciprocity. Reciprocity. How can they at the core start something that is more rooted in the collective in order to avoid, the few people that they are hiring down the line or whatever, from a situation where they where those people then feel like I'm underpaid, I'm doing all the work, this person's getting rich. So you're looking at it kind of like in reverse, where I guess us as on the ground organizers, we look at it, how are you as a worker, fighting, the people that own your business, your boss or whoever, for like fair pay and striking and doing all these, but you're looking at it somewhat in reverse, as like we still have a system where people want to start business, want to create new things and have people work under them. How can they go about it in a way that is in the system that is already extractive? How can they go about it? And I guess, a collective way. That's more so what you're saying.
I'll tell you how I got here too. I do identify as a socialist and have for the majority of my adult life. And I'm a very unlikely business owner. It's like if I were to talk to myself 10 years ago and to see myself here talking about capitalism and entrepreneurship, I would be shocked. I spent 12 years in the K-12 classroom in Title I schools in the US. I went and got my PhD to protect the community grown programs that that I was building with families there, understanding that we were always under threat of being shut down. And so went into the PhD program studying grassroots grown schools in multicultural and indigenous communities, looking at how can we grow autonomous infrastructure, starting with education, right? Because education, like we can't sustain anything if we don't have people's consciousness on board, right? So I was working with these schools through my dissertation research to look at how can we grow autonomous infrastructure. Now, at that time in my life, I was literally thinking, like, can we do strategies like squatting, occupying land, building unpermitted buildings, like fuck the system. So I don't know if I can curse, but like literally I'm on that like anarchist side extreme of how do we create the infrastructure that we need to provide the needs for our community and collective. And I had a big paradigm shift moment in conversation. I was with these educators and co-researchers for a period of years. And the biggest surprise I had that emerged out of the conversation when I asked them, what's the one thing that, now I'm in this position as a scholar, as a researcher, what is the biggest, most urgent issue that you would like me to investigate and try to solve? And they told me funding. And what the reason for that was because, I was working with a Hawaiian school, charter school, and they still had to operate with a board, right? And they still had to get state funding. And so they understood their school truly as a Hawaiian school. And I don't mean that just by culture. Like when you get deep into the Hawaiian culture, and there's parts of sacred knowledge that I'm not privy to share, but it really is outside of what you can expect in a colonizing paradigm. And they saw their school as a true continuation of the Hawaiian legacy. But the contradiction to that was whatever they had to give up in order to appease the board, in order to receive funding to continue to pay their teachers, right? And then the other school I worked with was created by an indigenous Kamba woman from Kenya in LA and serving a multicultural population. And the same thing was what I would do to expand this work if I came into a windfall of money. But I understood this as a teacher who worked 12-hour days, sometimes 6-7 days a week, working on the weekends to give back to my kids in the school system. When you are on the ground and all of your time is spent organizing, pouring into your people, you don't have the luxury of time in order to solve the problem of resources and funding, right? And so the quickest solution for a lot of people is writing grants, where you then become beholden to the grant giver. And a lot of that waters down the radical agenda of these movements. And so that's where I started to really investigate this work here, right? And starting to understand exactly like you said, we can't be starting businesses just to feed our own families and to be enjoying some form of wealth by ourselves. We have, if we are liberation-minded people and we're radical people, businesses have to become another strategy in the toolbox, in addition to organizing, in addition to all the other work. This is not a replacement for that. It's just another strategy. So the people who have the skills and have the heart to start their businesses, and many people start businesses because they've already been burnt out by the systems that they were operating in, right? A lot of us have spent decades trying to change a system in the system, and then there's a natural shelf life to that for some of us, especially when we start our own families and we start to understand that, I was a teacher for years in the classroom. It was really taking a toll on my nervous system and my mental health. So if you are already exiting the system because of the harm that's accumulating in you, and you're thinking about going independent, can you go independent and serve a bigger collective purpose? That's what we're trying to start to lay the groundwork here with this model.
Interesting. So like you're looking at it, I guess the overall mission, and I know you were next, Ichi, but I'm just curious. So you're looking at it, I guess the overall mission is you see a lot of people that are, organizers on the ground, leftist spaces that are utilizing the nonprofit. And even that, we're constantly talking about the contradictions, within the system, and how it, kind of crazy can get with the grants and getting money from nonprofit. But you're looking at it as opposed to what if instead of grants, when it comes to actual work on the ground, you had actual like revolutionary business people that could support that. That's kind of your thing. Okay.
And there's another piece to that too, is I started really thinking and understanding many businesses exist as infrastructure to the community. Like, communities are going to need places to eat, places to get their clothes made. Unless that's where it started in the first place, is that people became specialized in their trade, right? My father is a construction worker. He builds houses. He's highly specialized in being able to build homes, right? And so I moved back home here to Taiwan, and I started to understand, we don't have a whole bunch of chain stores. We do, you see more of them now, but the majority of our businesses are family-owned businesses that sustain not only the family, but create a pillar in the community that the community can rely on. I can go here and I can get my needs met through the business, for food, for my car fixed, whatever these things are needed. And so there is a way to have your business exist in the community to fill a need. And if you are generating profit, which is necessary right now in order to contend with the accumulation of wealth over here, right? So if we can generate profit in a non-extractive way, then we can also make sure that our community members don't have to over rely on these corporations that are already hoarding wealth and state infrastructure.
Y'all using a couple words that I'm like, huh? What you said, revolutionary business and non-exploitive or non-extractive profit. These are new concepts because they normally like run into each other. So really quickly, I think so I'm trying to follow, and I'm hearing again, like, there's a commodification of human basic needs. And I don't know that I would say business as we know it, especially most of us who are Black and brown, who are unfortunately speaking this crazy ass language. I don't know that whenever we started thinking of what they are telling us as business, I'm not sure that it was ever to help the community. You might think that it's to help the community, but essentially you're trying to sell people something that they don't have. And so I'm curious if whatever this thing that we're trying to struggle, capitalism, imperialism, exploitation, whatever, I wonder if you, and let me back up. I think there are a bunch of full of shit political organizations, and you can get into organizations and waste your motherfucking time. So I would say that. But are you suggesting that these people that you are working with, they have some level of individual empowerment? And what does that mean to them as it relates to politically organizing? Because I don't want to, limit my mind to hair. Is she talking about personal empowerment or dismantling systems? And then how is this personal empowerment going to dismantle the system? So I wonder, like, where does like the political work, the political organizing go as it relates to these people with a business solution or business attempt?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious why. I feel like everything that I've spoken about doesn't replace or contend with political organizing. Does it in your mind?
Well, I think it has to be, and that's why I'm asking about organization, because if it doesn't interact with, then it, so for instance, like the US government, as crazy as they are, like they knew for a fact to get people away from political power, they had to realign their minds about how to build economic power, and they thought it was separate. So that's why, Nixon and others would be like, well, we need to get these Black folks away from talking about Black power, and they need to have Black banks and Black businesses. They deserve to have Black banks.
Yeah.
So
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, so I'm curious about, like, how do we make sure that these business owners who you're educating are not going in this thing for personal empowerment, and they are actually equipped to change systems or destroy or dismantle systems? And then, like, what type of capital do they even have to be in these space? Like, do they have, I got a lot of questions, but
I love having this dialogue. So the first thing, I think the biggest contradiction that I think you're speaking to, I'm really curious, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's historically situated, one, in the United States, right, as a context.
Kind of. Well, so I lived in Central America and the UK for a total of 4 years, and so for instance, just like they had circulate the black dollar in the US, I heard people talking about circulate the black pound in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously in Nicaragua they've on the other side of this thing, but in Costa Rica they are absolutely. So for instance, like I just came back maybe a month ago, and I was talking to an artist who's in school. He wants to open up his own art gallery. He's working at a restaurant, and I said, hey, like, are there stores and things that? And most of the artists in the whole country has to gravitate and sell their art or get their art mass produced, which takes money out of them, and go and adjust to the tourist industry that comes in. So it's like it's no longer art anymore.
Yeah.
And so
clarification. Mm-hmm.
So Costa Rica, I mean, Jamaica, the UK, and the US is kind of the framework I'm talking about in terms of like
I get you.
trying to, go ahead.
I think what I am still seeing, so please correct me if I'm wrong, is even in these cases that you've named, we're talking about sort of reactive, smaller scale solutions to, I think, what I'm talking about, which is it's reacting to the existence of imperialism already imposed on the people, right? We're talking about a context that exists after the transatlantic chattel slave movement, or chattel slavery has already existed, where we have people who were denied their liberties, right? Bodily autonomy, who were the most exploited, right? For profit. And then we're talking about a history after that of trying to regain autonomy, right? And so all of this is contending with an economic system that's already been established as the most extractive form of capitalism that the earth has ever seen. So that's why when I started the conversation, I asked us to stretch our entire worldview out a little bit and say that's actually, in the greater scheme of history, that's a relatively new idea. So not to say that the political organizing for this moment is wrong. It's absolutely necessary. We're still contending with this very sinister, very oppressive, very extremely extractive and exploitive system. But what I'm playing around with here is, and not just me, but synthesizing many different strands of scholarship. What happens when we pull our imagination out on either end and go, what existed before capitalism? What did our ancestors know before capitalism? So when you say businesses can't exist as a function of the community, right? As in service to the community, can we look before colonial imperialism and say, what did our ancestors know about the specialization of trade, apprenticeship to a certain trade? What did they know about helping one another with their gifts that they had, their trades? Why were there people that were designated as the seamstresses, as the storytellers, as the house builders, as the leaders? Like, we have models that can be looked at to understand where we're going in the future. So I'm pulling, can we get beyond just a reactive, not saying that we abandon those movements still need to exist now. Those political organizing and contending with the state problems that we have right now need to exist. But some of us have to also be doing the work of wondering, what do we grow in the gaps? Once we've dismantled the state, right? What world exists afterwards? Because what's going to happen if we don't start to imagine and at least experiment and at least start to counsel with one another and create the culture, create the infrastructure for that, is that we can pull this whole system down. We can have liberation, and then people without another option, another education, another imagination to live into are going to revert back into all that they know.
Makes me realize I still need to finish The Sky Full of Elephants book. That's what you're making me think about right now. But yeah, I don't know where we're at with time. But I guess I'll try to just ask like a closing thing. This is just a lot to like digest. Is like I said, I was just always curious of the thought process behind it and you know how it works in injunction with actual organizing or how the different contradictions of it all. So I think you've laid out a lot of it to just, you know, for us to just think about these things. But let me see. I guess my final question would be, I guess when it comes to your overall mission, are you when it comes to this process, are you in community with primarily, I know you know primarily helping and people that are business owners, but when it comes to outside of that, like are you in community with people on the ground organizing as well? And what are there, do you have like, yeah, I know you were saying you like these conversations. Are these things that you're constantly navigating or working through in lifetime too, as well, if you are in spaces with people kind of doing leftist organizing and that aren't business owners, but, you know, may even just be, you know, like I said, utilizing grants, utilizing, or even just like on the cooperative side, like, are you in community with people that are on the ground organizing, and how, I guess, have they seen kind of what you're doing like in live time, like in like as far as these businesses in the community, like how are the organizers after? I mean, I know maybe this is more new, so that you haven't been able to kind of see overall like how it's kind of spanned out as far as you speaking with these business owners and you having relationships with people on the ground, and like are people on the ground being like, yeah, like this business that now is collective, they're actually helping us, you know, with our mutual aid thing and making that be easier, or their help. Like, I'm just curious of like, what are some of the testimonies that you're getting from like actual on the ground stuff when it comes to the businesses that you're helping to look at and from a more revolutionary perspective, or if that's anything at all.
I want to spotlight my collaborator, Simone, here, because when we started our partnership, she's already been a 7-8 figure business owner, and she's been able to do tremendous work funding on the ground work in Gaza, and redistributing, like organizing the helping with them, like really in intimate collaboration with them, organizing how the dollars are literally getting channeled over there to the work over there. And she pours into quite a few different different on the ground entities. And the key thing here is it's not just about writing a check and then getting a tax write-off. It's being in deep relationship with those people and responding to their needs. For me personally, I'm still in relationship and community with a lot of the people. I'm new into the business world, and I've just moved from the US to Taiwan a few years ago, but I still maintain my relationships with the schools that I researched with and my community as well. So a big part of my redistribution is to create sustainable jobs for people of my community. So my first hire in my business was one of my former high school students in the community where I was a high school teacher. And so I'm able to help her support her family by hiring her in my business. As my business grows, my plan is to continue to increase what I'm able to distribute to, for example, the schools that called me into this work, where they're able to not have to rely so much on state grants or private entity grants that might want to change their vision. So that's where I'm working towards. There's a lot more to my vision, but I'll keep it short here. But all that to say, the bigger vision of what we're doing, like you said, political activism is not going away or being displaced by this. We see this as a way to more abundantly fund those on the ground movements. And the challenge that we gave all of our students enrolled in the course this time was to be, by the end of the course, earn the tuition that they spent for on the course, to earn it in the time that they're taking the course with us, and then redistribute the whole amount. And so we're seeing people just practice moving hands, eliminating scarcity. Having money move through their hands, getting right back into the hands of their people, eliminating scarcity as a muscle while they're growing their businesses, so that they don't fall into that pitfall of like hoarding and feeling like I never have enough. No, start to really trust the circulation in your community, right? Yeah.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I didn't know if you had any final questions or anything else, Geechee, or comment.
No, I mean, I appreciate you coming, spend time with us. I look forward to more conversations. And I would, I mean, if there's things that you have that you can send for us to like read and study, like I would like to see how maybe y'all explain planned economies in countries like Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba, especially that they have an organized mass and they do fund movement and stuff. And so I'm curious how you and your team kind of like think around people or groups that's doing what you plan to do.
Yeah.
On I guess a government or governance wide level. So like I'd be curious to learn more.
Yeah, I do. I've made a few case studies of it, because that's really important that we see some of the evidence. Like I said, I feel like we're still early stages in this work, but there are incredible examples and legacies that we can draw from people who have taken the route of business paired with community organizing and created incredible infrastructure change. So I'm happy to send over those resources that I have.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Joey.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we'll be in communication. You enjoy the rest of your day. It's morning over
there. Yeah, it's morning here.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks for having me.
Bye. All righty.
All right.
How are you feeling as we wrap?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was interesting to just interesting to see all of that drawn, because like I said, at first I'm just scrolling online, I see all this decolonial anti-capitalist business, and I just wanted to see like, what does this overall mean, because I said I'd never seen that language with this, so I just wanted to, I guess, map out like what that looks like and what that means, and kind of like her site from it, and what it means to do that work. So it was interesting to like just hear laid out, and obviously we have our interesting comments, the undefeated chat, also kind of like trying to see too, like the similarities between things we've seen before and versus like what maybe slightly doing different, and the different thought process behind it. So that was interesting, for sure.
No, I think the energy behind it makes sense, because even in the spaces that we're in, like and Baba Wakesa and some other folks talk about, like, in this work you have to be a warrior, healer, and builder. And there's a lot of times that we have warriors who are like jarheads, and they're like running into the wall and looking like they're militant and not doing nothing. We have folks who claim to be builders and building something for themselves, and then folks who claim to be healers, and they're doing spiritual bypassing and escapism, and like having a conversation with people who know that, like, again, we have to build something also while we fight, I think is great. I think it's always important to talk through this idea of oppression, right? And like, what is that like? And is it individual? Is it something that we individually, like we're, how people talk about, like, I'm liberated and then I'm gonna help other people liberate it. Like, it's just making sure that we are not like recreating some of that language. And then I guess, again, at the end of the day, is like, you have to, respond to the current economy. And I think sometimes when we do financial and business focus without like a economic analysis or geopolitical analysis, I think we're like in at the bottom of the thing. But it sounds like she's way more broader than that and thinking deep deeper than that. So like that was good to hear. And yeah, I'm also curious about when we get the chance to talk again or in the future, like looking at people who are building out the solidarity economy and the planned economies. And as I said, like studying other countries and see what they have done to consistently fight off the yoke of these crazy people. So, but yeah, I think overall good conversation. So I thank you for bringing the sister on.
Yeah, I'm happy I tried something different. Like I said, I didn't know, but like I said, I knew I was curious, so that's all. I didn't know what I felt, but I knew I was curious to learn more, and that's what I did. Yeah, so I guess what do you have going on like the rest of the week and in your world?
Yeah, we we got study session tomorrow.
Which have been great. Those have been great, y'all.
Yeah,
Keith has been politically educating the
yeah.
out of us. Like,
No,
so they
you
have
know what? I actually, Dr. Joy, she's in the back. I'm gonna actually send you that thing because it's very interesting. It's like a Harvard study on organizational structure from a business side and how all organizations, whether they're business or nonprofit or radical, whatever, it's like they go through these evolutions and revolutions. That would be interesting because most people study it from, again, a business side, but we're kind of looking at it, how it looks and how it interacts with an organization that propels to be radical and trying to do political work. So yeah, we'll be doing that tomorrow in the Atlanta chapter. We have a tennis meeting on Friday. I'm gonna be working on this story, Miss Shirley.
I'm excited. I love this writer Geechee. Like it's really, usually
I've been writing a long time ago.
I know, but I don't get to. I mean, I know you have other pieces, but I never seen you go through like writing a thing in live time, like a story. So it's cool because I know you helped me so much with my story last year. So it's cool to have you send stuff that you're like writing, So that's really dope. Much respect for that. But yeah, I guess I'm gonna be trying to figure out my my financial situation, figure out my life, apply for some jobs. I don't know, y'all. It's given I'm gonna do freelance for a moment. That's what it's given. There's only one company I'm actually interested because I honestly, it's like when in your heart when you just feel like, yo, if I apply for any other place, like I just feel like the same thing's gonna happen. I think especially going through a back-to-back firing, it really kind of makes me feel like, bruh, maybe, yeah, like it's just feeling like the nature, the ancestors, the universe, all that stuff is just feeling like maybe I just need to not be at a job for a moment. So like I'm gonna see what I can make work. Freelance. Like I said, there is one job I'm interested in that I have. If I'm able to get it in with that one, just because I think I need a change of environment overall. Like I think trying to do the job that I was doing from remote, I'm just seeing that it's just not clicking. So I think, I'm going to see, if I can get this company because it would be hybrid. And it's like, I typically avoid hybrid because I'm not a driver, but it's very close to me, the office. So I'm like, maybe being around other people or whatever will help me, because I just think because I do so much outside of work, it's very hard for me to like be company minded, which is what these companies want when you work for them. And so it's like me knowing that it's just like the only way I'll be company minded is if I'm fucking there in front of y'all and I can't do nothing else. Or, I'm gonna just be at home doing other shit that I think is more important than whatever this company is doing. So I think that's why I keep getting, like caught up. So that's why I'm just like, I don't know. I may freelance. I may do part-time work where like, part-time, a mixture of part-time freelance. I'm just looking at like, maybe I'll switch up, it's like, I know. And like I said, I don't like to get too deep in talks about this, but I'm just trying to figure out how do I survive and stay a bad bitch under capitalism while trying to defeat capitalism? Like, how do I do all that at the same time?
Read Shirley's story. All right. No, look, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna share a part. You pick a part. We have not closing reflections. We have the department stores, teachers and lessons. We have love, birth, nursing, and fishing husband. We have family Namesake and Royal Peacock. We got Still Stylish. They thought I was the bride. We have
I want that one. I want that one.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna read it really quick, and we're gonna let y'all go after this. Still Stylish. They thought I was a bride. Shirley loves clothes. In many of the tenant meetings we had in 2025 and 2026, I jokingly asked her, "Can I borrow one of your hats?" This beautiful brown sister starts to light up when she talks about her style back in the day. I'm more than convinced she had it and still got it. As I remember one day walking into the apartment complex and seeing her getting off of the city bus with her rolling suitcase, looking extra fly, maybe just coming back from visiting family in another city or state. She shared the times she would go to the Fox Theater. Johnny Taylor was performing at a Miller High Life beer sponsored concert, appearing alongside Bobby Blue Bland and Mayfield Parker at the Fox Theater on September the 13th in the early 80s. I wasn't born yet. I was born in 83. She had on black suede pants with big cuffs and a red turtleneck and a suede vest. Shirley also said, I was once at a wedding 39 years ago, 1987, and I was so fly, they thought I was a bride. Smiling less with her beautiful stoic facial expression, sharp-looking eyes that you know had seen a lot. Shirley said, of all my childhood friends, mainly the girls, I have only 4 girlfriends left alive. Her experience compared to data from the 1930s showed the fragility of Black life. Black children born in southern urban environments like Atlanta face significantly lower life expectancies than their white counterparts, with a noticeable gap between boys and girls. I'm gonna skip ahead. Although Shirley in her life saw some level of Black upward mobility, she didn't struggle to locate poor Black communities in her city. As she was growing up, there was targeted slum clearances at Beaver Slide, also near the Atlanta University Center. She probably interacted with friends and family who lived in Grady homes, but even more established neighborhoods like the one she lived in as a child, Summer Hill, along with Vine City and parts of People's Towns, housed many low-income Black families, even there, with conditions varying from impoverished shacks to more established homes. It is important to note that us sitting in the senior building dominated and owned by Ellington Properties on Martin Luther King Day in 2026 was significant for me. I had recently turned 42, dealing with organizational and personal crossroads, and while dedicating my life to this work, seeing the suffering and hopelessness of the people, I appreciate this opening up of her life. It doesn't sit lightly with me that she was one of the first elders I met when I started engaging the tenants. Her speaking through the joys of her life while grappling with the normalcy of death is humbling to me. That section.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, she reminded me because that's what I used to say. Like when I was a server and I used to do these weddings, it would always be like, child, I got on a fucking tuxedo. And these men is still checking for me, all these women in gowns. These women in gowns and dressed up.
Shirley got a story that when I share, her husband, when she was birthing her first baby at Grady, I don't know who it was, her sister or somebody, called her husband and said, Shirley at Grady, and she waiting for the baby to come. And he was like, oh, okay, great. He hangs up and he thinks because she's waiting for the baby to come, he got time to go fishing. So he went fishing. And he was like, he said something like, well, if you had a home birth, I would have been there. But anyway, and she said she had to let him go because he liked fishing too much. So after
I can't.
After 27 years, she was like, Nah, but yeah, this is gonna be it's gonna be a little interesting. I appreciate Miss Shirley and her thing, but so that's it. That's all. See y'all soon. Thank y'all for tuning in. We'll be back again next week, maybe.
I really want to know Jared's thoughts on this. I literally want him to do like a whole I mix what I like on this episode. I really want him to.
Nah.
I want him to pause and talk. Like, I really am curious of like his. I would love for him to break this down. Yeah.
Nah. He ain't gonna he gonna crash out. He gonna crash out. He ain't gonna be able to do it. Hey, anyway, appreciate y'all. See y'all soon. Peace.
Only if you